Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting Cabinet of Portsmouth City Council. I'm Gerald Vernon-Jackson, I'm leader of the council here, and I chair this meeting. Before we start the business, I think it's only right and appropriate just to, if we maybe have just a minute of silence just to think about the Queen and her illness. I think our thoughts will be with her and the whole of the royal family at this very, very difficult time. And she has been a wonderful Queen for us across the country, but her frequent visits here has made her incredibly popular and important to the life of the city. So just for a minute, I think if you don't mind, we'll just be quiet and think of Her Majesty. Okay, thank you, colleagues. I think we just need to get through the business that we need to do today. So, ladies and gentlemen, the normal thing is about fire alarms. If there is one, it's real. We need to assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in the square. And please sign out if you've signed in, and everybody knows about using the microphones. Ladies and gentlemen, my understanding is that there are no requests to speak on items on this agenda from anybody. We've got apologies from Councillor Susie Horton, who is off at the University of Warwick doing a leadership course. Colleagues, any declarations of interest? Oh, sorry, Lynn.
Yes, I just want to say I need to leave at 4 o'clock because I've got another meeting at 4:30 online.
For that, thank you. I have another meeting at 3:30, so I'll be running out the door before you. Excellent. Steve?
Thank you, Leader. I understand that Councillor Fazakerley has asked for his apologies to be offered this afternoon.
Thank you. Yes, I didn't get there. Okay, colleagues, can we just go around the room and just so everybody knows who everybody is and why they're here? Should we start at the far right?
I'm Helen Dickerson. I'm the Deputy Monitoring Officer today.
Thank you. Where should we go? Chris?
Chris Ward, Director of Finance.
Alison Harper, Democratic Services.
Good afternoon, Leader. Chris Atwell, Cabinet Member for Communities and Central Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kimberly Barrett. I am Cabinet Member for Climate Change and the Environment.
Councillor Steve Pitt, Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Economic Development.
Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation.
I'm Councillor Lee Hunt. I'm the Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and City Development.
Matthew Winningston, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Social Care.
Darren Sons, Cabinet Member for Housing and Preventing Homelessness.
Tristan?
Tristan Samuels, Director of Regeneration.
Megan Carter, Head of Major Projects.
Ian Maguire, Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Growth.
Paddy May, Corporate Strategy Manager, here for item 3.
Simon?
Councillor Simon Bosher, Leader of the Conservative Group.
Councillor Scott Bater-Harris, Member of the Conservative Group.
And Josh, from the news, just to make sure everything is recorded. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. We've got 2 items on the agenda, although one snuck on without me noticing. So, Paddy, do you want to quickly do corporate plan?
Thank you, Leader. So this report is seeking approval for the corporate plan and also asking for delegated authority to be given to the Chief Executive to agree any minor changes to the draft document before it's published. The corporate plan is an update from the one from last year. It maintains its link on helping to achieve the medium-term vision for Portsmouth that was agreed with partners, but it also has a focus on the current issues facing Portsmouth and our residents, with particular details about the Council standing up for Portsmouth and the residents of Portsmouth. The plan shows how everything is brought together, and subject to approval today, the plan will be published and also cascaded to all our staff, so that all our staff can understand how they can contribute to what the council wants to achieve.
Thank you, Penny. And I thought it was interesting that this is not something that's been originated with the council, but originated with the priorities that the people of the city have set, and that this is the way in which the council is trying to address the things that they have asked us to do, which I think is exactly the right way around. It shouldn't be the council imposing our views on them, but the residents of the city telling the council what they want us to be doing. Okay, colleagues, anybody want to come in on this? Lynn.
Thank you. I don't know if this is possible, but in 3.3, and the second bullet point, first thing is to maintain our roads. Can that be changed to maintain our transport infrastructure? Because I think we've got past just roads. There is so much else going on now.
I think that's a very sensible point. Okay, colleagues, Steve.
Thank you, Leader. I agree that it's us responding to what the public have told us, and that's one of the primary reasons why we did that city visioning work that concluded during COVID. A very, very interesting exercise that, especially the event that we managed to sneak in just before the first lockdown at the Pyramids, when around 100 members of the public, pretty much selected at random, turned up and gave their thoughts and feedback. There were a whole series of other workshops and stuff that underpinned all that work to make sure that it was properly consulted on and that we had a really good representative view, not just from a particular group, but from groups in various different forms of employment, different social backgrounds, different income levels, so that it really was representative. And that obviously then became the Imagine Portsmouth work that fed into that vision. Corporate plans, the strategy that now sits underneath that and informs all the action-based activity that the council will do, and any good organisation, whether it's a company, social enterprise, charity, or even a council, should know what its mission is, what its vision is, what its strategy is, and then what its actions are that flow out of that strategy. And this gives us clear accountability up and down those work streams to make sure that we're delivering what the people of Portsmouth require us to deliver.
Okay, thanks so much indeed, Steve. Colleagues, are you happy with this? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Let's now move on to Tipner, and our role here is to pass this report on to full council so that they can make the decision on this next week. I've been asked to read out the recommendations before Megan comes in because there is a typo, and therefore just to make sure for the record we've got this right, I will read the recommendations as they should be. So recommendation 1, to agree the recommendations 2.1 to 2.14 for onward submission to full council, with the amendment that recommendation 2.13 should refer to Appendix F and not Appendix G. I think the rest of it is as is, but for completeness I'll read the rest of it. 2, that subject to confirmation of the Council's agreement to recommendations 2.10, Cabinet 1 agrees to progress with the design of an option for the land at Tipner West and Horsey Island East that responds to the principles agreed by full Council 2.10 above and limits the residual financial burden, i.e. after all realistic attempts to attract further funding, to the Council to no more than £10 million, and instructs the Director of Regeneration on behalf of Portsmouth City Council, as the promoter of the work, to work up an associated planning application and business case. Little 2 agrees further spending of up to £7.7 million from the City Deal funding as described in paragraphs 4.7 to 4.10 to prepare the planning application and business plan for the approved option. This expenditure will be subject to criteria and gateways which will be agreed by the Section 151 officer and leader of the Council after consultation with group leaders prior to expenditure being incurred. And little 3 agrees that the delivery programme will highlight in advance gateway review points in which updates and supporting information will be provided to full council. Colleagues, thanks so much indeed for coming for this. Megan, do you want to introduce this item?
Thank you. So as you'll all be aware, at full council on the 13th of October 2021, a motion was tabled to pause the work on Tipner West. As requested in the motion, a report was brought forward to full council in December, which updated members on the progress that had been made, along with the various options that had been explored since City Deal was accepted by Cabinet in January, Cabinet and full council in January 2014. The City Deal project will have now been on pause for a year next month, and the implications of this uncertainty has far-reaching consequences for the council, which is explained in this report. As such, it is now appropriate that this new report be presented to yourselves and to full council for their consideration and direction. The report looks at the recommendations with regards to progressing an option for Tipner West, the financial impacts and the complex environmental impacts of progressing any form of development on this site. The recommendations being presented here today are subject to a decision being made at full council on the 13th of September.
Thank you very much indeed. And this is a very important issue. The land at Tipner West has been derelict for many decades and is not a beautiful gateway into the city. But also we can't not do anything, because with rising sea levels, the sea defences there are at the end of their lives. And if the sea defences go, it's not just the land at Tipner West that is at risk, but also homes in Stamshaw and Tipner as well, existing homes. So we can't not do anything, so we have to do something, and any intervention is going to mean some disturbance to the area and some level of land reclamation. Colleagues on the council were not happy about the council's plan for a large area of reclamation and the Lennox Point proposal, and so this report kills that option. But it also says that we do have to do something to make sure that that land is protected, and also existing houses in Tipner and Stamshaw. So we're trying to come up with something that works and where the costs to the council are not huge. I think all groups had wanted to go with the City Deal option, but actually that means we have to find £5 million of cuts to do that, and that's large numbers of people's jobs going. So we're trying to find a series of principles that I think are very sensible about making sure we protect the environment, that we protect the council's finances, that we do as little land reclamation as is possible, and I hope that's a series of principles that works and takes us forward. Colleagues, any thoughts? Lee?
Yeah, I've got a bit to say, Leader, all right?
Of course.
So I hope you'll bear with me, but I think it's important to lay things out. Can you all hear me clearly? So, being the only person in the council back then to oppose significant land reclamation and also vote against the proposal in the Cabinet, I now find myself leading on the planning and city development side of the regeneration of Tipner West and Horsey East. No other councillors came that day. No one came to speak about it. Indeed, it was a concept with general support and continued when our Conservative colleagues took control. Then only when the RSPB and the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Trust, quite rightly, in my view, began campaigning, did many others in the council start changing their minds. So, us here, having inherited a proposal that my colleagues, understandably, thought had general political support, we set about listening to everyone. The RSPB, the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Trust, and others like Stamshaw and Tipner Action Group, and of course our colleagues in the council. And I believe, and I know, I can see it, that in the report today, that all that lobbying is represented in the report. So I'd like to thank everyone, Megan, Tristan, Ian, and all our officers who've brought this forward, this report forward, and so many have made representations to the council to enable us to bring about this thoroughly well-constructed report. I'd also like to thank all of our advisors out in the field who still continue to take soundings and who continue to look at the engineering aspects of this work. Too frequently we've heard that all of that work has been wasted. It's not wasted, because if the council agrees to go ahead and have vision, that work will still be valuable. So I'd like to thank all of you and all of them and everybody else involved for help on this massive and ambitious regeneration. And I hope that the parameters that we're going to agree today will help secure Portsmouth's economy into the future. But I would remind members that in the same way that Ian Gibson brought the ferry port and wealth creation to Portsmouth, and Leo Madden brought the Spinnaker Tower and boosted shopping and tourism in Portsmouth, this council has an opportunity to help secure prosperity, homes, jobs, and protect the habitats for wildlife. Everyone knows full well that when this council pulls together, we can deliver these massive investments, and the sooner we get on with it, the better. You only have to look at the executive summary to see the enormous benefits that Tipner West and Horsey East offers to Portsmouth. Previously, it was focused around homes, but we turned the telescope around and looked at the natural environment first. We looked at the Ramsar site. And we will, in this group, prioritise its protection. We know that not so long ago that Ramsar site was of poor quality, but it's been improved since. And we also know that it's very important for overwintering birds and waders. And if all goes well and the council pulls itself together, we will see a net biodiversity gain of about 10% minimum. So we've been working hard to protect the natural environment and the SSSI and all around Tipner and Horsey East. We know from the engineering works that I've mentioned and the scientific investigations that the land is polluted with heavy metals and other chemicals. We also know sea levels are rising and are predicted to rise by 70 centimetres. The conclusion is that if we do not take action, all these pollutants will leach into the sea, in other words, the SSSI. Action 2 must be taken to protect the land. Portsmouth has only one option, and that is to hold the line. That is our policy against rising sea levels. The sea defences protecting this land are eroding. Again, the scientific and engineering advice we have all seen in the group meetings that we've had shows hundreds of homes and businesses flooding across Tipner and Stamshaw towards Hilsey. This is not scaremongering. This is fact. It is vital to get on and renew these sea defences. This route, if we choose to take it, enables the council to go after the funding. Anyone who subsequently votes against these things or causes yet more delay adds delay in cost to building those defences, which are currently enjoyed by most other places around the city, from Southsea to Hilsey to Copner. Tipner and Stamshaw are entitled to be protected too. So this way forward, when we take the report to the council and the council debates it, they can, if they choose, wish to provide hundreds of new jobs for Portsmouth, hundreds of much needed affordable homes, prioritise the protection of the Ramsar site, and net biodiversity gain by hopefully more than 10%. We have worked hard with officers and others to avoid undue costs onto Portsmouth Council taxpayers. I hope very much that when this is debated in the Council, that other councillors, perhaps for political gain, will not gamble the houses and businesses of hundreds of people across Stamshire and Tipner, and gamble that this week, next week, some other time in the near future, that their homes might be hit by flooding. We must get on with it. So I hope and trust that everyone pulls together and gets this done, and I'm very pleased that this report is going up to the Council.
Thank you, Lee. I think it's very helpful you've mentioned the executive summaries, and actually for the record, if I'm just going to quickly read them out. So the principles are as follows. The report requests full Council discount all existing options for Tipner West and set out principles in order to bring forward an alternative option. These principles are as follows. Rules out significant land reclamation, option A, the original Lennox Point master plan. 2. Rules out the do minimum option, option D. 3. Prioritises the protection of the land south of the firing range, the Ramsar site. 4. Provides a minimum of 1,250 homes which maximises affordable housing and 58,000 square metres of employment space. The minimum affordable housing is set at 30%. 5. Satisfies the terms of the city deal. 6. Satisfies the requirement of the regulatory bodies including Natural England and the Environment Agency. 7. Maximises local job creation. 8. Minimises costs and impact on City Council finances and services to the public. 9. Minimises land reclamation to meet the principles listed above and provide biodiversity net gain of a minimum of 10%. Okay, anybody else? Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'd like to put on record my thanks to particularly the Director of Finance, the Chief Executive, Megan Carter and Tristan Samuels, who put in a huge amount of work and worked very closely with the administration to make sure that we have included every bit of information in this report that full Council needs to be able to make a grown-up decision and move forward. So it was absolutely vital that this didn't look like a set of proposals, any of which was trying to steer a particular direction. What it is, it's about creating a grown-up space within the parameters that we can work with in order to be able to move this project forward. It's clearly, as both yourself and Councillor Hunt have quite rightly identified this afternoon, not an option to do nothing and to spend around about £50 million in just protecting the land mass and not doing anything else with it at all would be a huge waste of council resources. Similarly, it's been made very clear that despite the direction of travel from 2014 to mid-2018 being clearly around the emerging view around the Super Peninsula scheme, which we then picked up and moved forward with, without, as Councillor Hunt said, any objection from anyone else, no deputations to Cabinet, no questions raised about funding releases, not a word from anyone, that nevertheless the other political groups have made it very clear that they do not agree with that proposal. We have reviewed that proposal in terms of the environmental studies, and the important thing here is we were always clear, and if you go back through those reports, it was always clear that the Super Peninsula was being the preferred option, could only be put forward if all of those environmental surveys and studies and the huge amount of work that we would have had to do with Natural England and with the Environment Agency and the Secretary of State around this would have stacked up to be a net environmental gain for that area. That was actually required of us from the get-go. At the point when we just about got that information coming back, everything was put on pause. We as an administration are now content that we would not support the Super Peninsula on that basis and that we will work with the other groups to come up with another option. But limiting that other option to either the medium land reclamation piece or city deal at this point would be folly. because when you've got 4 options in front of you, none of which make any financial sense whatsoever, my discussions with the team have been from the very beginning, you don't choose to be shot in one of 4 different ways. What you do is you go away and find a different alternative, and that's what this report does. It sets down very clear criteria and parameters within which that work can now be progressed, and it must be done at this point cross-party. I think we should say that we would have welcomed more cross-party engagement before, and if concerns had been raised at an earlier stage, then what we're now proposing to do could have been set up. Perhaps it was beholden to us to actually be the responsible leader and insist that that happened. We did not. And for that, we must share a proportion of the blame. But equally, you tend to respond to requests when you're in an administration, and no such requests came forward until the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust and RSPB launched their national petition. So we are now saying that the outcome of this must be that all political groupings work together on a regular basis to come up with a scheme that we can bring back collectively to full council. Because this scheme will not be completed under this administration. It probably won't be completed under a future administration that succeeds us, and it may only just be completed into the one after that or even the one after that. So it's in everyone's interests, unless they've got a crystal ball and can see the future, to work together to make sure that this project is something that can have continuity and that everyone consistently supports in the years to come. Because when we're not the administration anymore, we will expect to be held to account if we suddenly start deviating from what we had asked people to agree to. And that should apply to all groups. So if we do behave in a grown-up manner, we do get together and we do work this forward, all of the benefits that Councillor Hunt's identified quite rightly and that leaders referred to are there to be had. I personally believe, and I've said so from the very beginning, that all of our focus should be on delivering that employment site, because that's the future of jobs and the local economy. It's the future, to some extent, of our own port. It's the future for marine and maritime industries in the Solent area, something that's been the backbone of the LEPS agenda for over the last decade. So we need to make sure we're embedding that and creating a prosperous future for the people of Portsmouth. And I would point out that that is the one thing that nobody disagrees on. Even the wildlife groups accept the employment site. So we absolutely must move this project forward to deliver that employment space, and at the same time work out how we can best deliver a quantum of housing on Tipner West that is a community fit to be lived in, that we would ourselves find acceptable as homes. Because I'm not going to put people into some overcrowded, congested, overly high-rise mess. I grew up in this city and I remember Portsdown Park, and not on our watch will we build some monstrosity like that on Tipner West. So it has to be a piece of land that works for a coherent and stable community to be able to thrive and flourish and bring up families. And that must be the key thing that we're working with within these parameters that we're asking the full council to accept. And I honestly believe that if we do work within these principles and we get together and work collectively, that we can get there. So we need to draw a line, we need to ditch the 4 options that were on the table, none of which were palatable in their current form, agree this set of principles and move together collaboratively and collectively in the best interest of the people of Portsmouth.
Okay, anybody else? Simon Scott from Conservative, anything you'd like to add? No? Okay, thanks. Oh, sorry, Matt, my apologies.
Yeah, I'm just going to be brief. Just about the, I'm just going to concentrate on the sea defences side of this. This is a really important part of this. So, Councillor Hunt very sensibly was referring to what happens if we don't have sea defences and the contamination from the land goes into the harbour. Both Gerald and Steve mentioned about the situation with the impact, as actually you did as well, the impact further inland as well and elsewhere on the islands. This is a really, really important point, because you'd have to build these things anyway. You'd have to do that even with no developments, but it would cost you significant amounts of money. It would mean a significant amount of work, and you'd still be left with some extremely contaminated lands that you couldn't do anything with. One of the things about developing this land, with those principles as have been set out in this paper, is that you clean it up as you develop it. Rather than us having significantly contaminated lands in the city, which is just sitting there and doing nothing, is unproductive lands and something you can't do. If you develop it, you clean that up. And for us, as a city, we should be looking to have clean, uncontaminated lands everywhere. That is our ideal. There are going to be other developments in the city over the next few years which are in similar states, which includes sea defences that don't affect just that area but adjacent areas as well. So this is just the first gambit in terms of that. We've done a huge amount of work on sea defences around the city. We worked very hard with the partnership. We've had unprecedented funding for our sea defences, and they've been done extremely successfully, both in North Portsea and are being done in South Sea, and we will have the future sea defence projects in the rest of the city and around the rest of the Eastern Solents. But we have to do them because we are a city hugely affected by sea level rise, and what we don't want to get into a situation of is where contaminated land in this city detrimentally affects other areas around us, the sea around us, and we certainly don't want to be in a situation whereby we're asking people to put up with endlessly contaminated land because we can't decide to do something, and we can't decide to actually make the most of what is there in front of us already. As colleagues have said, this land has been doing nothing for decades, absolutely decades. We have this opportunity to work together with other parties on the council and with other groups around the city to really make a difference, a real gateway to the city from the west, and to actually make what has been unproductive, precious land in this city, precious land. Land is not at a premium in this city, and make the most of it. So I'd like to thank again everyone who's put this report together, who's put huge amounts of time into it, and I hope next week we as a city council can come together and come up with a way forward that is really going to make a difference, something that's going to be sustainable, something that's going to be environmentally really good, positive, that's going to clean up the land there, and is going to defend existing homes and any future homes and businesses in the Tipner West area for the next 100 years or so.
Okay, colleagues.
Could I just mention something, Leader?
As long as we're quick.
I'll be very quick. So, when this hits the newspapers and so on, we all need to make very clear that so far as planning goes, and I will wait to be put right here, that when a planning application does come, we can't look at the GPs, doctors, nurses, this sort of infrastructure, because people want us to do that. But as part of this process, we're not there. Although as a council, or as a group, we're looking at ways of getting more GPs into the city. So I just wanted to put that marker on there. The things like buses and so on, Councillor Stagg has been very successful in bringing in about £52 million worth of funding. And we're going to see other planning applications coming forward like Tipner East. And so we need to see how all those things will combine together and how we as a council can help other services outside of the control of the council, the CCG, bus services and so on, to make those communities sustainable and to make them into communities that Councillor Pitt has talked about. So that's a very important little marker that I just want to put in there, Leader.
Okay, folks, I think that's it. So, just I wanted to put on record my thanks to Councillor Steve Pitt, for doing huge amounts of work on this. He's been very kind to thank other people as well, but Steve's done a huge amount of work and it is right to publicly acknowledge that as well on this. So thanks, Steve. Okay, so colleagues, we have a series of recommendations as I've read out, and this is to pass this to full council for decision. So colleagues, are you happy with the recommendations to send them on to full council? Great. Okay, thank you very much indeed, colleagues. That's the end of the meeting.